What's one normal parenting rule you secretly think is emotionally damaging as hell? Please don't insult or compare your kids with others. Not all are the same, and this hurts more in the long run. When I was 4, my mom took me out of ballet because she said I was so bad at it and it embarrassed her. Then she spent all of elementary school comparing my normal kid play dancing to one of my schoolmates who was in ballet multiple times a week since pre kindergarten. It made me feel so awful and took all the joy out of any type of dancing for me. It also ruined that friendship because I didn't want to hang out with someone whose presence reminded me of feeling like I wasn't good enough, even though none of it was her fault. Ouch, that's brutal. I guess she didn't understand that you can try to get better at things and actually get better. I don't understand how parents can parent without a growth mindset. Like, the growth of your kid is kind of the point. Story 2. Parents getting annoyed at their child having emotions that aren't favorable. I was the family jester for years. I was not allowed to have negative emotions and had to be constantly happy and cheerful. As a result of that and other horrible life crap, I had an emotional breakdown at 23, 24, and stopped being the jester. It took years for my mom to accept that this was the new normal, but my extended family never did. One of the many reasons I no longer talk to my aunts is because none of my trauma was ever taken seriously past the breakdown, and I wasn't allowed to talk about it or my physical health issues once I was out of hospital. On the other hand, no longer having to be the court jester is incredibly freeing, and I tend to be more goofy now that I know the people around me aren't using me as an emotional support animal. Story 3. Constantly asking kids if they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, especially preschool and grade school age kids. My family was the worst for this. I was a weird kid who always struggled to make friends, so was excited whenever any kid took interest in me. I was also a huge tomboy. Unsurprisingly, I was more interested in what other boys were doing, and they often talked to me too. Anytime I mentioned it when asked about my day, there would be an entire chorus of squeals and, "Ooh, guess who has a crush or boyfriend?" I'd get all upset and embarrassed because they made such a big deal out of it every time. One time when I was really young, I got this bubble machine slash gun thingy and couldn't get it to work. I was sitting on the pavement in our street struggling with it when an older boy came up to me and fixed it, showed me how it worked, and played with me for a bit. Looking back, it was really sweet because he was older than me, but young enough that his mates would have mocked him for helping a little girl. I was really happy, and when I told my dad and gran, they made such a big deal out of it that I ran in my room sobbing. It was constant teasing for having any kind of social interaction with the opposite gender. Story 4. Being dismissive of their children's interests. For example, telling your kid that their favorite group isn't real music, or that their favorite cartoon is obnoxious. Every generation of kids has trends, fads, media that their parents just don't get. Break the cycle by tolerating anything that isn't actively harmful or dangerous. Story 5. Silent treatment. My mom once gave me the silent treatment for over a month because we were hanging out so much lately with my in-laws, and it wasn't fair that we were spending so much more time with them. The in-laws in question were making frequent trips to our city because my father-in-law's mother was in hospice where we were. She told me I should put my foot down and stop letting my husband's family come over while his grandmother was dying to be more fair to her. We don't talk anymore. Story 6. Giving them no privacy, going through their rooms, journals, tablet, phone, car, etc. Unless there's a legitimate concern, let them be themselves and have things only for them. They're human too. This is a big one for me. So many of my peers brag about going through their kids' crap or putting trackers on their phone or car, even taking away the door to their room. Like, no, dude, I reserve the right to go through their stuff if I sense they are in danger. But I start from a place of trust. My son deserves his privacy and to live his life without me intruding into everything. I will say my son has never betrayed our trust, and he's just graduated high school with honors and is going into his university honors program and is excited to eventually go to vet school. He's a great kid, and I credit a lot of that to us giving him the freedom to explore the world without us horning in and intruding on his privacy all the time. Story 7. The Clean Plate Club, also known as forcing your child to finish every bite of food on their plate no matter what, is an objectively terrible way to teach kids about proper portions because it is counterproductive. All it teaches them is how to force themselves to eat even after they're sick or full, which often leads them and future generations of their family to be morbidly obese for life. I understand that nobody wants to waste food, but if that's the problem, just teach your child to get less of it and to go back for more if they're still hungry when they finish it. That aside, I'd honestly rather throw some away than neglect a child, and yes, forcing your child to hurt themselves by overeating is cruel. I also agree with how bad this problem can be when parents pick out the portions for their kids, especially when those portions are adult size. The same type of mindset mentioned above also applies to that. Kids should be free to stop eating when they're full, no matter who's putting the food on the plate. A lot of you mentioned saving the uneaten food as leftovers, and I agree with that being a good idea as well. Saving it for later is fine. Expecting a child who's full to force it all down in one sitting is not. Story 8. Forcing physical affection, like hugs and kisses, teaches kids their boundaries don't matter. And constantly defaulting to screens instead of interaction just reinforces emotional distance. Meanwhile, violating privacy by snooping through their stuff erodes trust in ways that linger for years. It's wild how many quote unquote normal parenting habits prioritize convenience or control over a kid's emotional well being. Kids remember which adults made them feel respected or like an afterthought. Story 9. I have one, but a word of caution to preface. I'm a special education teacher and have been for 21 years. I took many classes on how developmental and environmental factors can negatively impact brain and behavioral development. When I started teaching, I had so much criticism, advice, on how to parent better. 5 years into my career, I had my first child, and I just knew I had all the textbook learning to be the best parent ever. And let me tell you, parenting, much like teaching, has more on the job training than can ever be covered in a book. I'm now the mother of 3 and much less judgmental of other families than when I was 23 years old and knew it all. That said, I do consider myself lucky for the education I received and the amount of research I read. The most common mistake I see that needs to be changed is this: don't jump directly to punishment. Teach a replacement behavior instead. If you don't teach a kid what you want them to do instead, you won't see a change in behavior. And jumping directly to punishment, especially physical punishment, encourages kids to lie about and hide misbehaviors, and it has a higher rate of recidivism. It takes way longer to discipline than to punish, but it raises much more morally mature, compassionate, and confident adults. Punishment is about satisfaction and revenge for the adult. Discipline is about teaching, implementing logical consequences, and changing behavior. My other one would be open to changing your parenting approach. So many people are quick to say, I was raised that way and I'm fine. Are you though? Be willing to admit personal fault or ignorance and strive to do better. Your children are whole humans. They deserve that much. Story 10. I feel like it's cruel to post photos of your kids on social media, especially when it's done in reference to something embarrassing or discipline-worthy that they've done. For instance, people on my friends' list will post photos of their kids with captions like, X cheated on a test, so now we're doing extra chores, accompanied by a picture of the kid cleaning. Or similar situations like filming and posting when a kid has a tantrum or meltdown. To me, that feels needlessly cruel, considering that kid will eventually be an adult and the internet is forever. They will grow up with a negative internet presence with a bunch of embarrassing photos, videos, and text posts out there that they never consented to, which could affect their social lives as they get older. Now, to be clear, I think it's wrong to put your kids online at all because data privacy really isn't a thing in most of the world. However, it is really gross seeing people punish their kids online like that. That's correct, the internet is forever, folks. Those adorable tantrum videos are going to make for some great future job interview material. Story 11. My mom and dad, but especially my mom, believed in not hyping me up and giving me a false sense of being good at something if I was not. So they didn't hang up my artwork, criticize my stories, told me I was bad at singing. They thought this was giving me a realistic view of the world. As a result, I've never tried art. I don't write even though I love to. I don't sing. I don't dance. I just don't attempt anything because I'm probably not good at it. Forget that. Parents should be children's biggest hype people. Story 12. Not sure that it's a rule per se, but parents who throw their children in front of an iPad while out are not only being lazy parents, but also emotionally damaging their children. Of course, kids want to watch their iPad constantly. They are children. They don't know how to regulate themselves. But what they really want is human connection, especially with their family. When you have a bad relationship with your child in 20 years, think about how you plop them in front of an iPad to sedate them, rather than calming and entertaining them yourself. Story 13. It is unfathomable the amount of parents who still think corporal punishment is acceptable. We know it is ineffective as well as damaging to the child. They cannot grasp why their children hits them all the while hitting the child. No kid ever needs to be spanked, slapped, popped, or whooped. If you did any of that to an adult, you would be breaking the law. Why would you think it's fine to do it to a defenseless child? There are a multitude of nonviolent, effective discipline techniques. Stop being stupid and lazy. There are way too many sickos out there who should never have children. Story 14. I think there's a growing problem in today's society, and it involves absolutely insane expectations towards parents. I know some parents are shoddy and careless, but the majority of parents are doing their best and are determined to be better than their own parents. A lot of them are losing their minds about it. There is so much theory on child psychology, but what about parent psychology and the insane pressure that is constantly put on them in a society where most of what would be good for the child theoretically are impractical for the parents? Everything you think might be good for your kid in some way might be bad in some other. Too much effort is spent thinking about the perfect way to raise a child, not enough time thinking about the changes that should be made in society to organically adapt our overall state of mind and behavioral patterns. Now we have exhausted and frustrated parents that do their best to be textbook perfect, but need to take pills to manage their mood and energy levels. Telling them the 100 ways they could be better is just adding to the guilt and pressure. Sadly, in the case of parenting, people are quick to mistake mental health for laziness. Story 15. Being overly strict is always going to lead to rebellion. I had a friend in high school whose mother would not let her date anyone. If she was to date someone, there was a long list of requirements. This was because her mother was a single mom and she didn't want the same thing to happen to her daughter. They were also super religious, so the requirements were like he had to go to the same church and the dude had to be a youth pastor for 5 years, etc. Well, she turned 18, said, "You can't tell me what to do anymore," and found a dude that knocked her up. They were supposed to get married, he stalled, knocked her up again, and then split. I wasn't allowed to date her because I didn't fit the bill, but I'm just saying I wouldn't have knocked her up, and if I did, I wouldn't have split. The kicker was I believe the dude she found mostly fit the requirements her mother wanted. Also, straight up telling your kids not to ever do something is a bad idea. I had a rule growing up that my parents preferred that I not drink underage, but if I did, I was to 100% call them. It didn't matter if it was a Thursday at 3 a.m., do not drink or drive or get in a car with someone who has been drinking and wants to drive. And the agreement was if I did that, there would be zero punishment, minus maybe the hangover. Drinking and driving has never been an issue for me. Stupid rules create the don't get caught mentality. Your kids are going to do the things they shouldn't. Don't tell them not to, give them the tools to be safe if they do, and the trust that they can come to you if they mess up. As cool as my parents were with drinking, they were the opposite about intimacy. I used to keep a protection on me when I went places. Trust me, it was a fail-safe, just in case. I wasn't getting some when I was a teenager, but I also knew if the situation presented itself, I probably wouldn't say no, so I had the rather safe than sorry mentality. Well, my mother found the protection on my person one day and absolutely lost her mind. Luckily, she mostly listened to reason, but she didn't like it. Story 16. I studied a bit of child psychology at university, and honestly, there's so much parents could be doing better, so much that's actually damaging in terms of later life outcomes. Things like letting your kid scream it out, not having dinner as a family, being too strict, not being strict enough, not setting proper boundaries, negative reinforcement that relies on something your kid has told you instead of educating them, not teaching your kid all you can in their early years, 1 to 4 years old, not setting proper bedtimes at night, like 8 p.m., lights out, lack of communication with your children, not reading to them at night, answering questions definitively instead of helping them to puzzle things out, and even a lack of the color green in a child's environment. Kind of crazy, right? Seriously, I can't think of them all at the moment, but you could write a book on the million little ways parents fail their children every day. It's actually quite crazy when you see longitudinal studies on just how everything affects children, leading to increases in the chance of using substances, increases in incarceration, emotional regulation issues, socialization issues, negative coping mechanisms, etc. I know it would be almost impossible to do things perfectly, but I've seen so many parents who are either simply ignorant or too tired to do a lot of the things that are important. Even when they try their best, they can sometimes fall short. Story 17. Teach them that crying won't get them what they want. Yes, you do need to teach them not to completely freak out over not getting ice cream every day. But the way to do that is not simply to ignore them when they're crying or scream at or threaten them. "Dry it up before I give you something to cry about," was a favorite phrase of my dad. Now, I'm no parent, so I don't know the perfect solution here. But if you're ignoring them or punishing them for being upset, all you're really teaching them is that their feelings don't matter to you, or worse, that they should actively suppress their feelings. A kid is probably not going to understand why they shouldn't have ice cream every day, but you want to at least acknowledge that you know they're upset and that you're not doing it to upset them. They'll just feel better if they eat better and will have more energy to play, etc. Yes, the tough love method, something I unfortunately know too well of. Also known as how to raise a future stoic who only cries internally. Story 18. My mom, when she was upset with me, instead of talking to me like I was a human being, would call family members or friends while I was in the room and say heinous crap about me in front of me to other people. This was like really common in the 90s. I had a bunch of friends whose parents did it too. My mother called me while she had one of my nieces for the summer. I'm 30, no kids, and started talking about how the kid had been misbehaving and how angry she was. I cut her off. "Is she in the room with you right now? Can she hear you?" My mom said, "Of course. What's the big deal?" I told her off for like 10 minutes straight. She claimed innocence, that she had no idea it messed me and my sisters up when she did that to us as children, and that she didn't do it to be cruel. She did it so she wouldn't take out her frustrations on us. I told her that it was passive aggressive and shoddy. If you have to tell others about your child's misdeeds, for the love of God, don't do it in front of them. If you have to talk about them to family in front of the kid, only tell the family the good things. Story 19. Expecting kids to smile at you even once while you have grounded them is unreasonable. No matter how good a reason you may have for grounding your child, anytime you intentionally make your child's life miserable, you lose any reasonable expectation for your child to act happy when convenient for you for the entire duration of the time you choose to make their life miserable, if not longer. Parents love to blather about consequences and telling the truth, but they feel entitled to not experience the natural consequences of their own choices. They expect their kids to smile and pretend to be happy, effectively lie, when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable for the parents to experience the natural consequence of making their child's life miserable. Story 20. I think it's really damaging when adults lie to children about what they're feeling in order to quote-unquote protect them. For example, a child who has just spilled juice on the couch asks an exasperated mom, "Are you mad at me?" The mom responds, "Of course not, it was an accident." The child then gets confused about their ability to detect emotions or thinks that one isn't supposed to feel angry. It would be better to say, "I'm kind of mad because you know that you're supposed to have juice at the table where accidents are less likely to happen, but I know you didn't mean to spill and I'll get over it once I've cleaned the couch. Maybe you can help?" Story 21. The damaging aspect of going through your kids' phones or rooms, in my opinion, is when it happens suddenly or carte blanche instead of being part of a clear agreement or being completely above board. No one, not even kids, deserves to have the people they thought they could trust sneak around and violate their privacy. However, accountability and transparency should be part of the conversation from the outset. For example, you could say, "Hey, so we're going to get you a phone. For the time being, this is what that's going to look like. You'll have parental controls, and I'm going to ask to check sometimes. I'm going to monitor your activity, and I will have your location, and I expect it to stay on." Humans have been doing rites of passage for eons, and with greater autonomy has always come greater responsibility and accountability. These additional expectations should be clear from the start. Have these conversations beforehand, not in a way that demonizes the child, but communicated in a way that demonstrates support and safety. Story 22. I hate one thing about my parents. They treat me like an adult when it's beneficial for them, like when I can go collect and sign my own documents. But they treat me like a child and disapprove of me for being an adult when I try making my own decisions, or when it clashes with their way of living a normal life. I can't do what I want because I don't know anything and I am a child. However, when it's their responsibility to give me a smooth life, then no, I have to go sign my own documents, collect my own report cards alone at parent-teacher meetings, and search and find my own college. But I can't choose my own course because I'm stupid and don't know what is good for me. Story 23. Santa Claus. Parents think it's a cute way to trick kids into behaving, but equating good behavior with material reward is literally teaching kids from birth that poverty is a result of moral deficiency and that poor people deserve negative consequences because they wouldn't be poor in the first place if they weren't just bad people. And conversely, it teaches that wealth is the natural result of virtue. The wealthier someone is, the more virtuous they must be. It's pretty much directly responsible for the messed up way our whole society is acting right now with respect to punishing poor people to allow billionaires to hoard even more wealth. And if any of these stories are getting to you so far in the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 24. I have an autistic ADHD, AUDHD child with sensory processing differences and demand avoidance. I've had to learn a whole different way of parenting than what's taught in most gentle parenting content. The below is intended for autistic, neurodiverse kids with demand avoidance profiles, but I use the same techniques on my neurotypical kid with stellar results as well. Children, especially neurodiverse kids, are terrible emotional regulators. When they get upset, it's because what's expected of them outpaces their skill set in that moment. So they get frustrated, and their skill set or emotional toolbox can change moment to moment, just like in adults. When they get upset, they can go into nervous system shutdown or trauma-like stress responses, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You can't engage with an upset child in the heat of the moment. You can't, in the moment, condition a child when they're in a stress response. It's best to accommodate their nervous system while they're stressed, co-regulate, and soothe them back to regulation. Then address their behavior while they're in their thinking brain. A child isn't giving you a hard time. A child is having a hard time. Story 25. I'm not sure about damaging, but things with their hair. My brother's father-in-law got all worked up because their 7 and 10-year-olds got brightly colored green and orange hair. I was feeling particularly combative at a family gathering, and when he got all worked up about how stupid it was, I said, "It's just hair, it'll grow, nothing is permanent here." The same goes for a crappy haircut, mohawks, and the like that most parents think are stupid and kids shouldn't do. They're kids, it'll grow back, have some fun. Story 26. Maybe not emotionally damaging, but I don't think forcing kids to share their personal belongings is good. Children should share because they want to, not because they have to. My family never made us share, and yet we did so frequently. By not being forced to share, we built up better boundaries and respect thereof for our belongings. My cousin would let me play video games with him, but I knew that if I didn't follow his, honestly, quite reasonable rules, then I would lose a privilege. I think letting kids decide to share or not can lead to healthier boundaries in the future and potentially less people-pleasing behavior. Story 27. Wanting your kids to always be productive. Parents often think that putting their kids in many activities is good for them. Yes, kids need to be physically active and need to socialize, but children need some downtime as well. They need some lazy days and slow days where they can just play, watch TV, make a mess, lay down on the couch, etc. In short, they need time to breathe and just be kids. They crave slow days just like we do. It is good for their bodies and it is good for their emotional and mental health. Not every day has to be productive. Parents need to normalize asking their children how they feel about their daily schedule and adjust accordingly. A lot of times, children rebel because they feel suffocated, like they have no control over their own lives. Story 28. Thinking your kids owe you gratitude because you fed, clothed, and housed them is such a funny take. You brought the kid into the world, that was your choice. You're not doing the kid a favor by raising and feeding them. That's basic stuff. That is level 0 of parenting. You're not getting any gold stars or medals for that. You are owed no gratitude for making sure the child you brought into the world doesn't pass away. That's your job, your responsibility, one that you signed up for. If you're lucky and you did a fantastic job as parents, your kids will stay in touch with you and want to be around you when they're grown up. Story 29. In the same vein as the "because I said so" thing, not apologizing to children when you get something wrong or when you accuse them of or punish them for something they genuinely didn't do can go in the bin. It isn't a sign of weakness to apologize to someone when you have made faulty assumptions and then blame them for something they didn't do. Yet somehow the moment parental authority or parental infallibility is involved, then "I don't have to" gets trotted out because to them being seen as wrong somehow degrades their authority. People doubling down when they're wrong is one of the more annoying problems of society, and yet people still do it to their kids as if their kids don't take these lessons to heart. Collective punishment, i.e., I'm punishing you both for something only one of you did, is also something that needs to be retired. Effectively, what is being taught to kids is authority is capricious, arbitrary, and never to be questioned. Those who have power over you do not ever have to have accountability or any logic to their decisions. Power doesn't have to make sense. You don't even have to do anything to be punished. Simply obey. Surely the role model should be appropriate, thoughtful, and reasoned use of authority, fair, and even-handed. Or am I expecting too much? Story 30. Never letting your kids fail or lose. In sports, a lot of adults will blame the refs or bad luck, etc. Sports are like life. Sometimes you can play perfectly and still lose. Take the L, find the lessons learned, and be better next time out. Fail a class or test and then argue with the teacher or school against it. Again, your kid might not be good at math, or your kid might not have studied or prepared properly, and that was the result. The life lesson here is process is more important than results. Fix and perfect your process regardless of what you're doing, and your results will be what you want more often than not. And if your kid messes up, let them face the consequences, as harsh as they are. As your kid rounds to 15-ish, let them own everything. Let them learn to ask for help when needed. Make them responsible for their lives and how it all goes. Because at that age, they're listening to their friends more than you. If you did your work when they were little and planted the right seeds, they will start to germinate when they have full responsibility for the process and results. But when they ask for you to step in as a parent, do it with full vigor and no "I told you so's" and work as a guide, not as someone who does the work for them. This is how you raise independent, well-adjusted kids. Story 31. Not respecting kids' privacy? Oh, they're a kid, it's for their own protection, that I read their journal and go through their phone and put spyware on their laptop and make them carry an AirTag 24/7 and took their door off the hinges because my house, my rules. I hate to say it, but the world wasn't any more dangerous in the late 1900s and kids just got on fine without a digital leash following them 24/7. And if you don't show some respect for your kids' right and ability to make their own decisions, you don't make them any safer. You just create a kid who sees shirking stupid rules as a way of life. Story 32. Not necessarily a parenting rule, and I suspect downvotes coming my way, but having kids you didn't plan for or more than you can fully take care of. I definitely don't think surprise pregnancy should be terminated or anything like that, It's just that so many people accidentally have kids or rush into pregnancies with partners that turn out to not work well with them. There is such a problem these days with kids that are underdeveloped in so many ways because so many kids have dysfunctional, unprepared, or abusive families. Parents that don't want to read to them, parents that don't have the means, methods, or even the emotional maturity to enrich their children's lives, etc. That's just heartbreaking. We're seeing kids fail classes and entire school years everywhere across the US, and these kids are just being passed through with no skills, no accountability, and no concern for their future. Having a child and raising them to be a good person is a colossal undertaking, and if you're going to do it, you need to truly be prepared and provide them with a strong foundation. I'm also so tired of seeing infants and toddlers with screens in front of them. The effects of screens and the associated dopamine rushes on young minds is so apparent and troubling. I just don't know how people give in to using screens when their children are so young. Parenting is hard, but you cannot fail your kids like that. No, I'm rambling, but my final hot take before I sign off: everyone should be born sterile. Although it sounds like a philosophical mess, I think you should have to demonstrate preparedness, emotional maturity, and the genuine desire to raise a child before you are able to do so. This way, children are guaranteed to be raised by people that care for and love them. Overpopulation gets curbed, and we would likely see a reduction in underdeveloped and struggling children. Just a thought with no plausibility, but it's something that has crossed my mind multiple times. Story 33. Millennials' parenting is often focused on open communication, a partnership with their kids, and giving them more freedom of choice and opportunities to make decisions. Baby boomers raise their kids with a priority on education, a strong work ethic, clear boundaries, and established rules. Which parenting style is better is subjective and depends on the child. Some need more structure than others. Both styles have their strengths and weaknesses. What works for one family might not work for another. Personally, I don't believe you can be a partner with your children. I'm not saying parents can't be a confidant, but parents aren't friends. Just like your boss at work isn't your friend. That just invites problems and makes everything harder than it needs to be. Creating that balance between being too loose and too restrictive is a hard thing to accomplish. Story 34. The need for kids to have a huge reaction to a punishment or situation. If kids aren't outwardly upset enough, it wasn't a good enough punishment. The goal is to teach your child how to regulate their emotions and be a good person. Neither of those require your child to be screaming in the corner. I think this contributes to a lifelong issue that we clearly see in every single generation. Quote-unquote gentle parenting isn't letting your kid get away with anything, it's just having conversations with them. The fact conversations are looked at as a bad thing with kids is insane. You can talk out why they're losing that toy or going to their room, and it's counterproductive not to. Story 35. Telling your kids they don't know anything, are naive, or have bad judgment. First of all, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Kids will believe you until they are in their 30s and get therapy. Why handicap them as unwise? Yes, they are inexperienced, but that's just not knowing if the internal alarm bells are warranted this time. Second, and I stumbled on this, I am no genius. If you tell kids they are wise and have good judgment, they believe that. And kids who think they have good judgment have much better judgment. They actually take responsibility for handling, creating, getting out of, or changing the situations they are in, because as people with good judgment, they trust themselves enough to listen to those internal alarms. You can't just say it and then let them go off and do random things, though. You have to pay attention and follow up. Be genuinely impressed when they surprise you with their good decisions. Be mildly surprised when they make not so great decisions. Usually they have such good judgment. Be consistent as a major booster of the My Kids is Wise Club. Your kid will try like hell to be wise, which, as a kid with a different upbringing, is way better than trying like hell to prove they are risky and worthless. Story 36. I've noticed that many parents give ultimatums that are either unrealistic or realistic but aren't followed up on. For example, saying you are grounded until you graduate high school to a freshman, or you are grounded from all electronics for a week, but then failing to enforce it after a few days. Punishments need to fit the offense and not be retaliatory based on how angry you are in the moment. They also need to be consistent. This is really difficult if you're furious and at the end of your rope. Consider this scenario. Your brother hits his sister, denies it, and hits her again. You put him in timeout, but then the phone rings. While you're distracted, she runs to him and hits him. He leaves timeout and hits her again, this time in the eye. The sister is also playing off this sympathy as she has started behavior that engages the brother until he loses his temper and hits her. It's like a seesaw of bad behavior that feeds into each other. Now she is doing that scream when things are not okay instead of that fake screaming for attention. The caller is going, hello, hello, and they are angry because it's an important call. This is what tests a parent's mettle, and even the best of us mess it up. But sometimes being lazy is to say you're grounded until you're 21 or something similar every time. When these inconsistent threats result in the child only being grounded for a few days, this inconsistency leads to more and more testing of boundaries to see what does it actually take to be grounded until 21. This is normal human behavior and even healthy in the long term as far as mitigating risk, but it's terrible for children and teens. Story 37. So many things, demanding physical affection, forcing hugs or kisses. Sometimes kids or adults just don't feel like hugging, and there's nothing wrong with that. Criticizing their personal style, telling your kids their hair, clothes, or music is ugly or stupid, etc. I've lived with my parent, I'm 30 now, screaming at me over my short hair, over being alt, over listening to Depeche Mode, etc. Invading their privacy, snooping through their things, going in their room without permission, not allowing them to close the door to their room, snooping through their phone. Interrogating them about their day, bombarding them with questions about school, who they talk to, what about, etc. It feels like an interrogation, and it's horrible for a kid. If they want to share, they will, especially if they know they can talk to you without getting judged or yelled at or punished. If I ever have kids, I will let them know that I love them and they can come to me with a question about anything and everything. I will never judge or yell or punish them. I'll give them age-appropriate answers. And if I don't know something, I won't just say, I don't know, or lie. I will say, I don't know, but hey, let's look that up. This teaches them two things. One, I'm safe to come to, and two, even parents don't know everything, and the best thing to do when you don't know something is to do research to learn about it. I will never snoop through their belongings or their phone, and I'll let them know if anything ever happens online that makes them uncomfortable or scared to come to me, and I'll help. I won't punish. And I will treat them as individuals with their own interests and likes. I'm neurodivergent and I have certain things that I can't easily explain why I don't like, but I have a deep dislike. I will understand that with my kids. For example, I can't stand cooked cabbage. It smells really good, but I can't stand the taste or the texture. I hated it growing up and being forced to eat it. I will never force my kids to eat something they don't like. And if some days they don't want the dinner I'm eating, that's okay. I can just put in what they're hungry for. Some days I am just hungry for a certain thing, like pizza or chicken with green beans, and it doesn't matter how hungry I am. But I just won't be hungry for a certain thing, and eating it feels like torment and I get unregulated. Does that mean I'm being a schmuck like my parent would tell me? No, it means I'm just not feeling that particular food that day, and that's okay. I'm not going to make everything a battle of needing to win against my kid. Now, before anyone comes at me, I don't mean that I'd serve ice cream for dinner. I mean that dinner will still be dinner, but if they are hungry for pizza instead of chicken or chicken instead of pizza or whatever the dinner is, I'll make them what they're hungry for. Story 38. I don't ask my kids to finish their plates or change their food preferences. I'm personally of the opinion that making dinner time stressful by requesting children finish their plates, especially if it's not a preferred food, is counterintuitive. It makes mealtime stressful. It teaches them to neglect their natural sensations of fullness, and it doesn't actually encourage them to try new foods because they're not happy to be at the table. I only make one meal and will plate out for everyone, but if the kiddo would rather have a toasted sandwich, I honestly don't care. My end goal is good nutrition. If that's happening, everything else is just a bonus. Story 39. I think the most damaging thing parents are putting their kids through is giving them zero preparation for the real world. The over-sheltering BS has gone way out of hand. They don't let them experience injustice. They don't show them violence and use that as a teaching moment. They don't let them make mistakes, fail, and then learn to get back up. They don't let their kids understand things don't always seem great. History was full of bad events, and it's great for teaching kids the difference between now and then. I also feel the media is responsible for this distorted image of humanity that does affect kids. They will show you bad people in movies and TV shows who hurt others, but somehow they're above racism. There's a general lack of social education. Ideals are taught, but not the flaws, and certainly not tolerance and acceptance. This leads people to swing either way, either turn out oversensitive or fully blown bigots because they're not taught right from wrong. You will literally see people advocate for freedom of expression and tolerance of others, but have the mannerisms of a kid and will trash public places and leave or rest their feet on seats on public transit and won't allow others to sit. Balance is thrown out of the window in favor of black and white ways of thinking and disregard for what matters to society as a whole and not just individuals. Story 40. It surprises me whenever I hear a parent admitting to doing these things, though I wouldn't say they're quote-unquote normal. Going through your kids' phone or diary is a huge invasion of privacy, and it will definitely cause them to learn to hide things from you rather than coming to you if there's something wrong. You're also increasing the likelihood that they'll simply stop visiting you once they're old enough to be out of the house. Also, those videos of parents destroying their kids' electronics, that, to me, is just abusive. Take away their electronics, but like, why destroy them? And what use is there in doing that? You'll just have to replace it one day anyway, unless they were to pay for it themselves. All it does is show a lack of control on your end. Story 41. I always had trouble sleeping, even as a baby. My mom and dad pretty much left me to cry it out as a newborn until I learned to just lie there for hours unstimulated because I still wouldn't sleep. But my throat was damaged from screaming, so my cries got quiet enough not to be heard downstairs. My mom went to the doctor about it when I was about 4 months old. He asked if I got car sick as well, and she said yes. The doctor recommended Phenergan. He said it was a car sickness medication, but that it would also make me sleep, and then he winked. My mom then proceeded to force feed me liquid Phenergan every night while I was young. When I was old enough to understand punishment, it became a punishment for not going to bed or for not pretending to be tired. I was terrified of it. It tasted so bad and gave me headaches. Also, since I was permanently on antihistamines, I always had a dry mouth and would drink a ton, so I'd be waking up to whiz anyway. I was toilet trained by 2, so this became another reason to be awake at night. I was just someone who didn't need more than 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night, and more made me groggy and unproductive. But it's inconvenient to have a child awake when you're not, I suppose. My mom recommended it to everyone and also started sabotaging my younger brothers as punishment for being awake late too, although never as often since they didn't have issues sleeping like me. This went on until I was like around 9 when I finally snapped and refused to take it. My mom slapped me for it, so I broke the bottle and said I'd do the same to the next one she bought. She ended up sneaking my grandma's sleeping pills into my food and I got sick a few times. I also started to really mistrust any food or drink she gave me and developed a complex about it. I'm now in my mid-30s. I still struggle trusting food I didn't prepare myself. I still have a dry mouth, and Phenergan still sickens me. I also still naturally sleep around 4 to 5 hours a night, sometimes skipping nights with no ill effect, although less of those nights as I get older. So yeah, all that stuff. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.